Good morning, dear friends. I hope that you can hear me. This is my first time with the live stream at the Empty Cloud Monastery here in New Jersey. I apologize in advance if the technology hangs me up. Is my sound okay? Or it should be okay?
It should be okay. I just wanted to double check.
All right.
Apologies for interruption. Okay, it looks like the screen is okay.
I'll begin by paying respects to the Triple Cham. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham saranam gacchami. Dear friends, we are within the last week before the full moon of the Salha Puja, which is the date that traditionally the Buddhists remember the Buddha's first teaching, the Dhamma Sutta. Back at my home monastery in California, we celebrated the Vesak with a particular focus on one of the three events that are remembered on that day, namely the awakening of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. And during the weeks in between May and now, we had been recalling the Buddha's contemplation under the Bodhi tree and under several other trees immediately following his awakening. The Buddha considered and contemplated the dependent origination in its arising and in its cessation while he was enjoying the bliss of his awakening. So my thought for today was to go back to the biography of the newly awakened Buddha and look at the account of Sahampati's request when the Buddha, after practicing for 7 weeks, well, I'll just begin to read from the sutta. In this case, there are 3 different accounts that I have referred to. One is the Vinaya account, which is in the Mahavagga, the Mahakandaka of the Vinaya. And then this is very similar to the account at the Ayyā Pariyesana Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 26. That sutta is called the Noble Quest. I'm not covering the entirety of that sutta, which starts from the Bodhisattva being touched by awareness of old age, sickness, and death, and touched by the sight of a samana, spiritual seeker. In that case, the Bodhisattva considered, why should I, being subject to that which is corrupted, seek refuge in something else which is corrupted, which is impermanent, insubstantial, unsatisfying. And with his, I would say, his tremendous integrity, launched his spiritual request, not being satisfied until he had truly found the way that truly leads to the goal, which is now the goal of all of our practice, the liberation from the round of samsara, the liberation from dukkha. The other sutta that I refer to in comparing is the Mahapadana Sutta, which is number 14 in the Digha Nikaya, in the long discourses. And in that case, the sutta is told in the form of the story of a previous Buddha, Vipassi Buddha, and demonstrating how each Buddha goes through a similar experience, so that what our Buddha, Gautama Buddha, accomplished is not simply the experience or the discovery of an ordinary human being, although it's very important to us that the Buddha was a human being who did make this discovery, but it's also something where the Buddha is realizing a profound archetype of what is possible for a human being to realize and to come to know and come to experience. In the Vinaya account, the Buddha sat for 7 days at the foot of the Bodhi tree, experiencing the bliss of awakening, contemplating dependent arising in its reverse and forward order. Then, after 7 days, the Buddha came out of that stillness and went from the Bodhi tree to a goat herd's banyan tree. He remained for 7 days contemplating. After that, he again emerged from meditation and went to the powder puff tree. This is depending on Bhikkhu Sujata's translation of the names of these trees. And 7 days later, emerged from meditation, went to the foot of the 8-flower tree, and again continued his contemplation. The connection to nature and protection that the newly awakened Buddha received during this time from the gods and from the powers of nature are a part of this story. I want to particularly read the verse that was recited by the Buddha. He said, "Seclusion is bliss for the contented, who sees the teaching they have learned. Kindness to the world is happiness for one who's harmless to living beings. Dispassion for the world is happiness for one who overcomes worldly pleasures. But removing the conceit, I am, this indeed is the highest bliss." Sukho viveka tuktasa sutta dhamma sapasato ambyam banjam sukham loke pana bhute susamyamo sukha virakata loke kamanam samatikamo asmi manasayo vinayo etam ve paramam sukhanti. This sutta is mysteriously out of order in the sense that when the Buddha refers to one who sees the teaching they have learned, this is referring to a teaching that one has heard. And the whole subsequent tradition, those of us who are sadhakas, we are ones who have heard the Dhamma passed down from a living Buddha. But the Buddha did not receive the Dhamma by listening. He discovered for himself through his own meditation, through his own cultivation of the perfections over many lifetimes, and through his own, I could say, a dialogue, and with all the other possible ways to awakening by studying under the systems of other teachers. So, in a way, you could say that this sutta is, or this verse is anticipating the teaching that the Buddha has not yet decided to give the teaching. And so there are not yet disciples who can hear the teaching and see based on what they have heard. But there actually is one disciple who could have been present at this moment in the sutta, and that is the Brahma, the divinity Sahampati. A little bit later on in the story, we'll see that Sahampati read the Buddha's thoughts and came and made his request for the Dhamma teaching, having read the Dhamma's thoughts. So perhaps Sahampati was even then listening in with his powers and being aware of the Buddha's teaching. And perhaps it's some kind of way. In any case, this line of the verse is anticipating what's to come. For us to hear the teachings is one of the factors which is a proximate cause for stream entry. It's something that's a proximate cause for the first entry into this noble path of training. So it's very much something that is at the beginning of the path. And likewise, the practice of kindness to the world, that's the practice of right thought, which is the second factor in the Eightfold Noble Path, to develop a harmlessness. So again, this is something which is part of the path of the trainee, to cultivate and develop kindness to the extent of becoming fully harmless to every living being by way of thought, deed, or action. And then dispassion for the world, that's called viraga. That's the fading away of lust. Dispassion for the world is happiness for one who overcomes worldly pleasure. In this case, the worldly pleasure is called the kama. And that has a special meaning in the context of this sutta. The human beings, the lower gods, the animals, and the beings in the unfortunate realms are all dwellers in the kama loka, in the realm where we are born being of the nature to be attracted to sensual pleasures, to sensual desires, to taking delight in sensual contact. At a gross level, those things like food and drink and warmth and shelter, which allow our continuation of our life, and then at a higher level, taking delight in thinking, seeing, enjoying things which are beautiful, or experiencing the pain of things which are ugly or disgusting, and experiencing the relief when we have the moments in this merry-go-round or the roller coaster of our karma existence, going back and forth between the things that are hateful and disgusting and the things that are lovely, beautiful, and uplifting and enjoyable. So that's the world of a person who's trapped in that karma realm. But even after hearing the Dhamma, cultivating harmlessness, when one comes up to practicing meditation, to practicing the right effort to be aware of the inner states of mind, and where one comes to start having insight into the characteristic of this karma world, seeing the qualities of impermanence, the inevitability of dukkha being part of this world, then one becomes disgusted, or one obtains nibbida, one becomes disenchanted towards these worldly pleasures. And with that disenchantment that comes through, especially those first two of the lakkhanas, seeing impermanence and seeing dukkha, that those fade away. The tendency to be reactive towards displeasure or reactive towards pleasure fades away. And then the last line of this, but removing the conceit I am, this indeed is the highest bliss. And so the conceit I am, the asmimana, is one of the very last of the fetters that drops away for a person or a being who is on the track to full enlightenment, to become an arhat in the world. The true, complete disappearance of that self-conceit. After that, one who's on the arhat path as a listener, as a disciple of the Buddha, might experience the disappearance of the taints, the kama taint, the taint of sensuality, the taint of existence, and then the last to go is the taint of ignorance. And then they may have the knowledge, I've done what has to be done, there's no more coming to birth for me. So I put this in a context, and I'm just imagining, this is not stated in any of the commentaries, and I didn't hear it from another teacher, but it occurs to me that I'm imagining the god Sahampati listening in on this. Sahampati, who is Sahampati? Sahampati is a Brahma. He dwells in the Brahma world, which is a higher realm of existence than the Kama world. The being the highest Brahma is called the Mahabrahma. That's a title which may be occupied by different individuals during different aeons, such as the Buddha is a title, the Mahabrahma is a title. This is a being of tremendous power and significance. His intervention is very important. But it's very interesting. When you read the suttas, for all of the references to Brahma, you see two very different kinds of treatments of the beings at this Brahma level. Maybe three different kinds of treatments. One treatment is the Brahmin religious seekers who are looking to see Brahma, to become united with Brahma, who are doing their religious practices with the goal of unity with Brahma. And the Buddha takes them down by showing that they have not actually been successful in being able to directly see Brahma. However, the Buddha has done so. And the Buddha shows them the more meaningful and significant path to the Brahma realm by way of practicing the Brahma viharas of cultivating loving kindness, sympathetic joy, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, and developing these meditations fully as a way of obtaining the possibility of union with Brahma, although that part of the path all by itself is not yet completely the path to awakening. Another way that there's a critique of the Brahma given very often in terms of the Brahma's conceit. Those beings in the Brahma realm have gone beyond being subject to sensual desire, but they have one fault left, and that is conceit. I can illustrate this in terms of a particular fable. This is given in the Sutta 12 in the Digha Nikaya. There's a certain bhikkhu named Kevata. He wanted to know about the end of the world. Where did the four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind cease without remainder? So he's pondering about the immaterial, formless meditations, or it might be that he's pondering about coming to the end of existence. As a very powerful monk, as quickly as a strong man can put out his arm, he transports himself to heaven and asks the god there his question, and they say, well, we don't know, but if you ask the god of the four great kings, one of the four great kings, you can get your answer. He goes there, they don't know. And he goes on, he's sent up the chain to higher and higher celestial levels in the ancient Indian cosmology, seeking a reply to his question. And finally, he's jerked it up to the great Brahma and asks his question. The answer that the great Brahma gives is, I am the divinity, the great divinity, the vanquisher, the unvanquished, the universal seer, the wielder of power, God Almighty, the maker, the creator, the first, the begetter, the controller, the father of those who have been born and those yet to be born. So the monk says, okay, can you tell me where the four elements of earth, water, fire, and wind cease without remainder? And the great Brahma repeats himself, I am the divinity, and so forth. He repeats 3 times. And then on the third time he asks, the great Brahma realizes he's not able to get around this inquisitive monk by just insisting on his own superiority. So he takes the monk aside and confides that he does not know the answer to the monk's query. But he doesn't want to admit this in public because it would be so upsetting to the other gods. And then he advises the monk to look out for, go back and find the Buddha, and the Buddha will know the answer. So we can see here that this Brahma is really suffering from conceit. He's really suffering from asmimana. The stories about gods and the teachings about the different cosmic realms, the fine material realms and the formless realms, have a certain parallel to things that can be experienced right here in this world. So a person who's alive can practice formless meditation, and you could pass away and be reborn into a formless realm of the universe. Or a person who's practicing the Brahma Vihara meditation could have a wonderful, blissful, heavenly kind of experience. And if they died in that pure state, they could be reborn in the Brahma realm. There is a kind of a parallel in my mind to this delusion, this conceited delusion. And that is the way that rulers and people who have sovereignty, whether they be political rulers or the head of a company or the head of a clan or the head of a family, there is a psychological process where people unwittingly begin to believe their own propaganda. And if they have the power to punish anybody who disagrees with them, then they may come to be surrounded by followers who repeat and reinforce the same propaganda. And it can lead to wealthy and powerful people becoming much more deluded than ordinary people or poor people. An ordinary person has to sort of confront the limitations of the material world in terms of not getting what they want, in terms of having to struggle for survival, in terms of knowing that life could be cut off at any time. And a person who's gets into these delusions of power can be self-deluded. This is one of the great dangers in the world, and it's something where if a person has any kind of authority, if they're wise, they will really be concerned about delusion and look for people who will tell them the truth to help them to escape from this terrible trap of falling into delusion. I am imagining the god Sahampati. The Sahampati was said to be a once returner. So at some time in the previous past, in a previous eon, he must have heard the Dhamma teaching from a previous Buddha and must have gained stages of awakening and be transported to this Brahma realm, but not yet have realized the full awakening. It's said that in the heavenly realms, there are some beings who are disciples of the Buddha and some beings who are not disciples of the Buddha. Those who are not disciples of the Buddha, if they were gods in the Kamaloka, in the sensual realm, all they do is they just enjoy pleasure until they use up their karma and then eventually get thrown back to a lower realm. And but those beings who are disciples of the Buddha, who might be reborn in a heavenly realm, they may listen to the teachings of the Buddha, contemplate and think, hear, and reflect and ponder about the teachings of the Buddha, and in that way continue on their development towards full awakening. Likewise, it seems to me that a God, a divinity who's a Mahabrahma, who's not a disciple of the Buddha, that he would just be completely trapped by delusion and conceit. But a God who's a non-returner like Sahampati is just waiting for the chance to hear the teachings of the Buddha so that he can complete his journey and come to the completion of his journey. And we're going to return now to the story in the Vinaya version of the story. I'll say one more thing about the other versions. In the Vinaya version and in the Majjhima Nikaya version, the Buddha is contemplating causation and its arising and cessation. And then in the Digha Nikaya version, they have added that the Bodhisattva, or the newly enlightened Buddha, contemplates the 5 aggregates in their arising and cessation. The 5 aggregates of form, feeling, perception, volitional formations, and cognition are the knowing factor. When clung to, these things are given as the summary of the delusion about the self. So at the first stage of awakening, one will have given up their commitment to the belief system, which is based on glorifying any of these factors or all of them altogether as being the self, which therefore must be protected, must be preserved, must be clung to. And in the later, in the Turning the Wheel of Dhamma, the Buddha mentions these 5 aggregates of suffering. He gives a description of suffering related to the wheel of samsara, to birth, aging, old age, and sickness and death, and how that arises. And then he says, in brief, the 5 aggregates of dukkha are suffering. So this is, in a way, it's like, just like the realization of the asmimana, the realization of the end of self-conceit is the highest bliss. So way the being trapped in clinging to the 5 aggregates is the lowest and or most dangerous, most difficult, worst part of dukkha. So in the Digha Nikaya version, by looking at the arising and the cessation of the khandhas, it's another way of thinking of the Four Noble Truths, so looking at the arising and the cessation of dukkha. Here's the account of the Buddha's meditation. After 7 days, he came out of the stillness. He went from the 8-flower tree to a goat herd's banyan tree. He stayed there. Then, while reflecting in private, the Buddha thought this: I have discovered this profound truth, so hard to see, so hard to comprehend. It's peaceful and sublime, subtle, beyond the intellect, knowable only to the wise. But human beings delight in holding on, finding pleasure in holding on, rejoice in holding on. And because of that, it's hard for them to see causal relations, dependent origination. It's hard for them to see ida paccayata. That's sometimes translated as specific conditionality. That's the most general statement of causation. Whatever arises has the nature to cease. And this is a very specific teaching. It's not just a general idea everything is connected to everything else or something vague, but it is a specific teaching. And then the 12 steps of dependent origination gives that developed out more fully. It's hard for the beings to see that because of their finding pleasure in what? In attachment. And then because of that, this too is very hard for them to see. The stilling of all intentional activities, that's the stilling of all sankharas, the giving up of all ownership, there would be upati, you could call it attachment, the stopping of craving, the fading away, ending, cessation, and extinguishment. Sabba sankhara samato, sabba patinisako, tanhakayo, virago, nirodha, nibbana. The formations are calmed and tranquilized, brought to stillness. And then craving is cut, just kaya. So the samatha is a kind of a gradual, gentle calming. And then the kaya is a complete cutting off, a separation. The Buddha thought, if I were to teach this truth, others would not understand. That would be worrying and troublesome for me. And spontaneously, these verses, never heard before, occurred to the Buddha. I've discovered with difficulty there's no point in making it known for those overcome by sensual desire and ill will. The truth is hard to understand. Those who are excited by sensual desire, obstructed by a mass of darkness, won't see what goes against the stream, what's subtle and refined and profound and hard to see. The Buddha reflected like this. He inclined to inactivity, not to teaching. Oh dear. I'm going to pause a minute and look at comments. And by the way, I'm not really watching the time, so I hope I won't go too short or too long. Greetings to Maria. Greetings to Madeline from the UK. Greetings to Buddhist Insights. They're offered to help me if I get stuck. Greetings, Gregory. Next Jen. Gregory says it's good to hear from you again. I hope all is well at Dhamma Monastery. The venerables there have their needs yet. Yes, I hope so too. And then Anamorna from Milk. So now, as we go along, I would like to invite you to give your own idea. Why do you think the newly awakened Buddha hesitated to teach the Dhamma? This is a question that troubled the commentators, and it has been troublesome to scholars of Buddhism for a long time. Different answers are given. So my method is not just to talk at you and to have you passively sit there and fall asleep, but instead to ask the students to be engaged, and you can show your engagement by giving your thought about that as I'll continue with this discussion. Analayo points out that in one of the versions which appears in the Agamas, but not all of the Agama versions, there's one version that omits the Buddha's hesitation. And so it could be possible that this was added later on, that it was some kind of archetypal folklore, mythological element that was added in as something that's not at the earliest level of the Buddhist teaching. Or else it's possible that this is a kind of a foreshadowing of how the Buddha would teach his disciples to preserve, protect, and convey the Dhamma. So the Buddha did develop his method in detail to explain, analyze, point out, illustrate, and guide his disciples towards being able to see the true Dhamma. And he developed the Noble Eightfold Path as the gradual training, wherein his disciples, little by little, could come to realize and directly see for themselves this true Dhamma. But he did not necessarily just go and stand on the street corner in the marketplace talking about his Dhamma to whatever passerby happened to be there. Instead, he taught the Dhamma to those who requested the Dhamma, who requested the teaching. So it's very normal for one to come and request the teaching. There was a case early on where the new Buddha sees Uddaka passing by a person, a merchant, who admires his blissful appearance and says, "Venerable, who's your teacher?" And the Buddha says, "I don't have a teacher. I only respect the Dhamma." That individual just says, "Well, okay, whatever you say," and walks away, not interested in hearing more. There's another case where one of the Buddha's disciples, a monk, tries to explain the Dhamma to a king. And he's not successful. The king doesn't understand the Dhamma that's being taught. And the Buddha, in a way, chastises him and says, that king is completely caught up in sensual pleasure. He's completely committed to sensual pleasure. He's not going to be able to understand the Dhamma that you're trying to teach him. So it's not necessary to teach until the person is ready to hear. So in this way, the Bodhisattva developed so many different, I should say the Buddha had so many different skillful methods to come to people at their own level and to teach them using metaphors and similes that are directly related to their own experience, and to bring them from that level up to as far as they could come in the gradual training, and give them time to work with that training for some time in order to come to the level where there would be a benefit for them to hear a bit more. So in that way, there is this idea that if it were true that the entire world was only sunken in their commitment to sensuality, it would be useless to teach them. However, Sahampati read the mind of the Buddha. He thought, the world is lost, it's perished, for the Buddha, perfected and fully awakened, inclines to inaction, not to teaching. Then, just as a strong man might bend or stretch his arm, Sahampati disappeared from the world of supreme beings and appeared in front of the Buddha. He arranged his upper robe over one shoulder, placed his right knee on the ground, raised his joined palms, and said, "Please teach, sir. Please teach. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are ruined because of not hearing the teaching. There will be those who understand." This is what Sahampati said. And he added, earlier, among the Magadhans, an impure teaching appeared, conceived by defiled people. So, the people are not only trapped because of having been born in the Kama realm and having the nature to be attracted and drawn towards sensual pleasures, and also repelled by sensual pain. They are not only beings who use their mental powers for unsuitable ends, just using it to conceive of more and more ways to get more and more sensual pleasures, more and more wealth, more and more safety, and so forth like that. Not only that, but they're ruined because they've fallen into an ideology, a teaching, which keeps them trapped. According to the commentary, there were teachings of 6 ascetic teachers who were regularly associated with Magadha. In Digha Nikaya 2, you can see the complete summary of many different kinds of wrong view. It might also or less likely refer to the Brahmanical teachers who had been the Bodhisattva's original teachers, Alara Kalana, Udaka Ramaputta, who are more closely associated with Kosala. So there's 2 different cities, Magadha and Kosala. Magadha is where the ascetics, renunciates are practicing in the jungle. And then Kosala is where the Brahmin, the high caste Brahmin priests are teaching and giving advice to our rulers. And the Brahmin caste is associated with the carrying down of tradition. And the ascetic monks are seeking through both through different practices, different self-mortification practices, and through different kinds of meditation. They're seeking to find a way out of this realm of suffering. It could be either one. And according to, this is just my idea, and Sahampati being a Brahma, what he would have heard is, I am the mighty one, I am the great one. He would have heard the teaching of a hard God who is completely lost in self-conceit and who cannot break out of this powerful trap of self-conceit without hearing the teaching. So Sahampati is making this request on his own behalf, as well as on behalf of all beings. He said, open the door to the freedom from death. Let them hear the teaching discovered by the Pure One. Just as one standing on a rocky mountaintop would see the people all around, just so the all-seeing wise one ascend the temple of the truth, being rid of sorrow, look upon the people sunk in grief, overcome by birth and old age. Stand up, victorious hero, leader of travelers, wander the world without obligation. Sir, proclaim the teaching. There will be those who understand. Twice, the Buddha repeated to Sahampati what he had thought about the difficulty of teaching. And on both occasions, Sahampati repeated his request. So this is also a kind of an archetype of repeating 3 times. So we say, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. We repeat 3 times that taking refuge in the Buddha. And the 3 repetitions means that we're really sincere. And it also is creating a kind of a feedback loop where the words that we're speaking are both something that's coming out, and it's also something that's coming back to us. So creating this feedback loop to allow, in that case, the taking the refuge to sink more deeply into the heart and to be like integrated, fully integrated into our psychology. And so that will be the meaning of the 3 repetitions. But in one of the other versions, he only gets the request 1 time. So that's not the same in all the versions. The Buddha understood this request of the Brahma Sahampati. Then, with the eye of a Buddha, he surveyed the world out of compassion for sentient beings. He saw beings with little dust in their eyes and with much dust in their eyes, with sharp faculties, with dull faculties, with good qualities, with bad qualities, easy to teach and difficult to teach. He even saw some who regarded the next world as dangerous and to be avoided, while others did not. This next world, that would be rebirth. So one who is a follower of Brahma, who does not see impermanence as something applying to the Brahma realm, could practice and dream of being united with God in the Brahma realm, or someone who's worshiping God in any of the religions of the world who thinks of heaven as being a final solution where one is able to escape from impermanence, might think that if they could just be unified with God, that would be the forever state, the escape from rebirth or the escape from impermanence. Of course, the Christians don't, or other religions don't have the same idea of rebirth. They have the idea that one is born, one lives, and then one is reborn one single time, either in whichever realm one is born to. They don't see it as a cycle that continues to go around and around. So in those systems, there's only one chance. But the Buddha, through his contemplation, through his divine eye, part of his awakening is that he doesn't only see one cycle of rebirth. He sees many, many, many cycles going back timelessly, even without a perceptible beginning. Infinite number of cycles of rebirth coming up to the present time. And then he also sees and knows the possibility that cycle of rebirth can come to an end. Now, in this case, or later on, we don't see the Buddha only being willing to teach those who have the little dust in their eyes, who are easy to teach, who already have a lot of good qualities, who already see the next world as dangerous. There's another sutta, I'm sorry, I can't give you the citation. I think it's in the Sutta Nipata. The teaching is about a farmer, or the metaphor is about a farmer who has 3 fields. One field is extremely fertile and has ideal conditions for growing. Another field is less fertile. The third field is very rocky and barren. And he asked the farmer, which field would you sow first? And he says, well, first I sow the one that's the most fertile. And then if I have something left over, I would sow the one that's less fertile. And if I still have some seed left over, I would throw it on the barren field because something could grow there. At least it would provide some fodder for the cattle. And the Buddha says, indeed, so when he teaches the Dhamma, those who have entered into the monastic form, who have renounced the world and renounced sensuality, have chosen to give themselves the most supportive condition for awakening, the most direct path to full awakening. And so the Buddha focuses on teaching those who've entered that path and who've fully undertaken that training. Even one who has had the stream entry, that first realization, and still has a way to go in their training. Once they have the stream entry, they've already done 95% of the work. There's only a little bit left for them to be fully realized. And so the Buddha would definitely give them the additional training, the additional wisdom, whatever they need to have pointed out to them in order to come to the conclusion and to fully realize. And then the moderately fertile field is compared with a virtuous lay people who are generous, who are righteous, who have a good morality, who uphold the 5 precepts, who are interested in hearing the Dhamma. And the Buddha has the generosity to teach them. And he doesn't just limit his teaching to only teaching them about sila and teaching them about generosity. He teaches them about the Four Noble Truths, and he teaches them about the meditation. He teaches them about the Brahma Viharas. He teaches them about impermanence. He teaches them about dukkha. He teaches them about the end of dukkha and that there is a way to the end of dukkha. So he can show the path even to people who have not taken this monastic form. People who have more difficulty because they may be frequently in contact with a society which is still fully committed to the way of sensuality, which is still fully committed to this karma world and all of its values and all of its delusions. And then this last teaching, the person who's suffering, they're going the wrong way. They're living in a world which is like hell because of their unwholesome deeds and their confusion, wherein they think that greed is happiness, they think that hatred is happiness, they think that it's enjoyable to hate, they think that it's enjoyable to harm, or they think that temporary pleasure is a permanent pleasure. They think that tranquility is boring and unpleasant. Even a person like that, the Buddha would still throw them some teaching, at least to try to turn them away from the hell realm, and at least to get them up to understanding heaven, understanding the way to heaven, which would be generosity, sila, or virtue, the beauty and the pleasure, the happiness of virtue, the happiness of generosity. And at least at some level, being able to see everything is impermanent, it's insecure, that there's no benefit to being too attached to anything, even being attached to all your wealth and all of your power and all of your relatives and all of your slaves and all of your employees and all of your women and all of your granaries and all of your cattle, all the things that the people are attached to, they can understand, anybody can understand, at least they know that the disaster can sweep all of this away in a moment. And they can start to have the beginnings of wisdom. And so the Buddha's teaching, the gradual training that Buddha gives, actually works at all of those levels. I emphasize this because in the world that we occupy now, outside of the monastery, it does seem that a lot of people are so far committed to wrong view that are far away from under even approaching this path, and who may even be destined for hell, and whose life today is something that's very much like a living hell. And so teaching enough wisdom to get people to choose to give up on hell, and to give up on the behaviors that keep them on the merry-go-round that is cycling in and out of hell, to teach them that they have the power to choose to go away from that. And then from there, it may be that a person could have there's a kind of an awakening when a person realizes dukkha is optional. I can look for the way out of dukkha. They can start their noble quest. So even a person with a lot of dust in their eyes, and with dull faculties, with bad qualities, and difficult to teach, is still able to hear some Dhamma and may be able to get out of this cycle of samsara and be able to get in a cycle which is leading towards awakening. The metaphor giving, and I'll return to reading the account, the Vanaha account. It was just like blue, red, and white lotuses, sprouted and grown in a lotus pond. Some remained submerged in the water without rising out of it. Others reached the surface of the water, while others still rose out of the water without being touched by it. When he had seen this, the Buddha replied to Sahampati in verse, "The doors to the freedom from death are open. May those who hear release their faith. Seeing trouble, O Brahma, I did not speak the sublime and subtle truth." The Sahampati thought, the Buddha has consented to teach. Then he bowed down, circumambulated the Buddha with his right side toward him, and disappeared right there. So this story is a story about the Dhamma, both in the sense of the truth, which was discovered by the Buddha, and in form of the teaching and the miracle of the teaching, that it's possible to point to the truth in a way that those who hear are able to realize it. I'm going to read you one other little sutta. I'm going to hold that for the end, and I'm going to come back to the questions. I'm not able to speak and read your comments simultaneously. I have to do them one by one. So Gregory asks, does this sutta imply that liberation is possible without compassion, and that only strong compassion drives the inclination to teach? Well, I know that the Bodhisattva developed the perfection of compassion. So he was not without compassion. I would rather say that in a certain way, compassion is the one thing that still remains. So one who is an arhat, or one who is fully enlightened, is not cut off from the experience of being a human being, or whatever kind of being they are. A fully enlightened individual, I'm speaking from the perspective of the arhat, because I don't spend a lot of time pondering what it would be like to be Buddha. My aspiration is the arhat aspiration, more so than the Buddha aspiration, or the Bodhisattva aspiration. But a Buddha, or a fully enlightened arhat, fully knows and fully understands the dukkha, which is experienced by beings that are still trapped on the cycle of samsara. But they're able to know that while still being, in a certain way, separated from it or detached from it. So they're not participating in dukkha anymore by by not being detached. And yet they fully know it. And so for that reason, it seems to me that compassion is a practice that fully manifests. In the Buddha, in the suttas, compassion is called karuna, and there's another very similar word, which is called anukampa. Kampati means trembling or moving, and anu means along with or together with. So anukampa is often translated as sympathy, but it's actually almost an exact parallel to the English word compassion. So compassion means you feel the passion with, together with. So out of sympathy or out of being aware of the difficulty faced by a person, then the Buddha gave the following 50 years of his life to teaching the Dhamma. He endlessly walked up and down the byways of northern India, teaching all different people in all different levels of worldly status and all different levels of spiritual status. He gave himself tirelessly to the welfare and progress of the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and was dedicated to establishing the bhikkhunis and bhikkhunis on a sound footing in the Vinaya, wherein the Sangha would be able to survive for a long time without failing. And that was done because of compassion. Even if you read the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, after the Buddha had recognized that the time is approaching where he's going to give up his mortal existence, and there's just a short period of time left, he then goes on a teaching tour. He's old, he's aged, he's subjected to aches and pains. The body is getting ready to fail. And yet he still walks and wanders, and stopping at each place, he gives the summary and brief of his teachings. He teaches the wings to awakening, the 7 sets of the 37 factors, which is one of the ways that the total teaching is outlined. And he gives the same summary again and again. And the message that we get is, we should learn this. We should learn it fully. We should learn the entire teaching of the Buddha. We should not just pick the one teaching which is our favorite and only teach that one. We should teach all of it. We should strive to understand and to realize it fully. And so that's a lot of compassion. There is something about that the request unlocks the compassion. I don't necessarily think that it's true that the Buddha would not be compassionate unless he was requested to be compassionate. But in a way, it seems to me that in order for his compassionate intention to teach the Dhamma in the world to be fulfilled, there has to be somebody in the world who's ready to hear. So completing the circuit for the Dhamma to be transmitted is not something that a silent Buddha is doing just all by himself, being awakened. Then for the compassion to be fulfilled in that way, by means of the transmission of the Dhamma, there have to be two beings. There has to be the one who can teach, and the one who hears. And so that's my answer to Gregory's question. John, thank you very much for your kind sadhu sadhu. And Nim, thank you very much for your beautiful symbols of happiness. So now I will go back and give you the last little part of this talk. And this is the celebration of the Buddha as a teaching. This is in the Samyutta Nikaya 6.2, which is called Gaurava Sutta, which is about respect. Shortly after his decision to teach, the Buddha made a further resolution. He had realized that a person dwells in suffering who does not have reverence and devotion. That's what Gaurava means. But he could see no living being worthy of his deference. So he decided to devote his life to serving the Dhamma. Sahampati again knew the thought in the Buddha's mind and appeared before him to praise this resolution and to state that all Buddhas of the past had made the same determination, as will all the Buddhas of the future. Sahampati came together with Sakka to the Buddha's dwelling, and the two deities stood each side by side. Sakka is the highest god in the Kama realm, and Sahampati is in the Brahma realm. Or you could say that Sakka is the old world's highest god, and the Brahma is the new world's highest god. So these two highest gods come together. The two deities stood each by one of the doorposts and uttered a verse in praise of the Buddha. Sakka said, "Arise, victorious hero, wander the world without burden, free of debt. Your mind is well liberated like the full moon." But Sahampati reproved him. "It is not thus, king of the Devas, that the Tathagatas are to be praised," and spoke his own verse. "Arise, victorious hero, wander the world, leader of the caravan, free of debt. Teach the Dhamma, blessed one. There are those who will understand." So in this way, he's praising the Buddha as a teacher. So at this point, we have the twofold Sangha, the twofold gem, the double gem, the gem of the Buddha and the gem of the Dhamma. And possibly next week, you might be able to hear more about the triple gem when you have the arising of the Sangha. This completes what I have to offer. And I'm going to invite anybody who happens to see this later on a YouTube to put in your comments and questions about this teaching. I'm accustomed to having much more live interaction with the students from afar. And I hope that through this channel of YouTube, we can continue to have some kind of direct interactions. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you think about this? What do you think about the question, the request of Sahampati? With that, we can close by paying respects to the triple gem. Araham Samma Sambuddha Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi Savakato Bhagavata Dhamma Dhammam Namasami. Subhatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangha Sangham Namami. Thank you everyone for your patient listening.